Dear Bob Burg. Bob, hang on one second. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence. He has a total sales approaching of 2 million copies. The American Management Association named Bob one of the 30 most influential leaders, and he was named one of the top 200 most influential authors in the world. Bob is an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. And he is also an unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. Bob, I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. What an honor to be with you and everyone. Wow, what a joy. Thank you for having me.
So for those of you that don't know Bob, if you haven't purchased his book, he's the author of, or the co-author of a book, which is more than a book. It's become a movement, and it's called The Go-Giver. It has been translated into 30 languages and has sold over 1 million copies. And it has created a culture that is the reason that we're having this conversation. Now, how I know Bob is actually through my father, who was also a motivational speaker. And I guess they were you guys were in a mastermind together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so they were friends. But I don't know if you remember this, Bob. The time that I actually met you personally wasn't with my dad. I met you with Bruce Turkel, and it was at a mastermind group that Bruce put together in his office over there in Coral Gables, and you came for that.
Yep.
And I was so inspired by just how generous you are and how giving you are in your time and your energy and your attention, and how you walk the talk of this go-giver mindset. I think it's fascinating. So to get started, can you quickly just tell us what the go-giver mindset is?
Yeah, it's really, a shift in focus. We would say that shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, Cairo, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of living life and conducting business, it's also the most financially profitable way as well as profitable in other ways. Their profit is more than just financial. That's just one term of profit. There's profit in terms of financial, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social, relational, and probably dozens of other ways. And as a universal law or principle that goes across the board, regardless of the area in which you're looking to be successful, to the degree that we take our focus off ourselves and place it on others, that is the degree that we create that benevolent context for success for ourselves.
That's amazing. So you say that you take the attention off of yourself, and that's actually, it's actually a little contrary to the culture that we are creating right now, I find, because there's a huge movement to self-care and focusing on your own priorities and creating boundaries for yourself and knowing how to say no. And there's so much influence on taking care of yourself. And I wonder, how do you reconcile that with the go-giver mindset?
Yeah, none of that is counter to the go-giver philosophy.
Tell me why.
So being a go-giver has absolutely nothing to do with being a doormat, being a martyr, or being self-sacrificial in any way, right? So no, if it has nothing to do with allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. It has nothing to do with, not charging appropriately for your services or not, or letting someone mistreat you. No, absolutely not at all. It's just understanding that when you take your focus off of yourself and place it on others, you're basically bringing to another what they're looking for. And that is something about them. You and I have, you mentioned Bruce Turkel, who's a dear, dear friend of ours, and he was a dear friend of your dad's. And Bruce wrote a book called All About Them. Well, why? It has nothing to do with not being good to yourself. It's just understanding that if you want to make friends, if you want to bring on more customers or clients, if you want to build your team, if you want to, um, whatever it is you want to do, you've got to make it about other people, because that's who they're,
Yeah.
in the sales vernacular, I often, when I speak at a conference, I'll often say, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right?
Right.
No one's going to buy from you because you need the money, or even because you're a nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you, or do business with you, or be your friend, or be in a relationship with you, or involve themselves socially with you, or whatever, because they're going to benefit from it. And why wouldn't they? So this is great news, though, right? Because it means that that person who can, move from what we call an I focus or a me focus to that other focus, that focus on others. Well, this is the person who, again, they're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step ball game, because they attract people to them. So we could say the very best thing you could do for yourself is take your focus off of yourself when it comes to your interactions with others.
It's interesting that you should say that. I was talking to a client of mine yesterday who is really struggling with feelings of anxiety. And in the conversation, there was a lot of, I feel this way and I feel that way, and this is happening to me. And when is this going to, there was like this focus of I. And during the conversation, the realization was, maybe the problem is that you are so focused on I. Maybe if we shift the focus, and this is not even in a sales setting, right? This is in a personal setting.
Mm-hmm.
If you shift the focus, and I asked her, who can you serve today? Who can you help today? Who can you call to see if they're having an issue? And if you start focusing on that, and all of a sudden you shift that attitude, then those problems that you have, or that you're focused on this problem so greatly, all of a sudden doesn't seem as important, because now you've turned it into a service.
Absolutely.
So would you agree that that's the same concept?
Caro, the best thing you can do to take yourself out of any kind of funk or depression or anxiety or what have you is to do something for someone else. Right. And again, that doesn't mean you're not taking care of yourself. And of course, if there's an anxiety or something that is chemical or that is very serious, we're not.
Of course.
About that. But sure, when you can put your focus on others and put your focus on bringing value to the world around you, it's amazing. First, how good you feel about yourself, but also how good others feel about you, how attracted to you they become, how they want to be a part of your life.
So, for those of you that don't know, Bob not only has this Go-Giver movement, but he also has a Go-Giver community. And that's a community of people that are like-minded, that get together to be bonded by these principles that he teaches in the Go-Giver, because there are 5 principles. And can you real quick just state what those 5 are, so that the audience knows? But we're not going to get into them, because I want to talk about this particular thing, but just tell us what they are. Sure.
They're the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity.
So his community focuses on those 5 values. And I've recently joined that community and been blown away by the generosity, and by the participation and the engagement, and also by the incredible conversations that we've been having with Bob on a weekly basis to mastermind around these topics of these values. And last week we're having a conversation with you, Bob, and you stated what your definition of happiness is. Will you please share with the audience what your definition of happiness is?
Sure. So first, let's do the brief kind of dictionary definition, which I think is still a legitimate definition. I just bring mine out a little bit more. The regular definition of happiness is the mental feeling of well-being, which is what which is what human beings strive for, the mental feeling of well-being. Now, everyone seeks that happiness, right? But people relate to happiness differently. What makes one person happy, what brings someone happy would be meaningless to someone else, or would maybe make them miserable, right? So we all seek happiness, that mental feeling of well-being. We understand happiness differently. We place different values on different things. And we also have to constantly make choices between things, right? Because resources are limited. This is not to say, by the way, that there's a lack. This is not to be confused with a lack mentality. It's simply that we all have a limited amount of time, energy, knowledge, money, whatever, so we're always making choices, and every choice that we make or someone we're dealing with makes is always going to be basically on, when all is said and done, do they feel that doing this thing is going to bring them closer to happiness as they understand happiness and within the limited amount of choices they have. So we'd say the mental feeling of well-being, that's happiness. Now, I take mine a little bit further. And I would say that I would personally define happiness as a genuine and ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with one's values. Okay. A genuine and ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with one's values. This doesn't mean we're always in a state of happiness, because life is life and things happen, but it's that general ongoing feeling. And this can only happen, in my opinion, this can only happen when we're living congruently with our values, not what we say our values are, not what we want others to think our values are, maybe not even what we tell ourselves our values are, but what are genuinely that which we value most. When we're living congruently with them, we have that feeling of joy.
Encuentra autores famosos.
Oh, hang on one second. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yes. And the reason that I brought that up right now is because, as you were saying about having this go-giver mindset, about being a person that's of service to others, about feeling good when you do something for others, I wanted to tie that into, you live a happier life when you are a service-oriented go-giver person, right? Isn't that?
Yeah.
It generates, not only does it generate more sales, not only does it generate more income, but it also generates just overall a feeling of happiness, of well-being.
Exactly. And when it comes down to it, that is what, it's baked into our Declaration of Independence, right? The life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And people say, oh, well, don't pursue happiness, let it come to you. I understand that. I get it. And yet, when we say pursue, what we mean is by living a life that is congruent with your values. That basically is how you pursue and or attract happiness.
And that's one of the reasons that I admire so much your community, Bob, is because you've done that, right? You've created a community of people that live, or at least aim to live congruent with these values that you believe so strongly in, and that they believe so strongly in.
Yeah, that's the really neat thing. And whether someone's a member of the Success Alliance part, which is the more advanced part, which you are, and we've loved having you. My goodness, you've added so much value just in the segments that you've been able to join us. But we also have an ambassador level, which is a lot less expensive, that people can join just to be able to connect with each other and to be able to do the go-giver networking and some of the other goodies, that are part. But I love the community that you've built. And I mean, I think, and I think you were doing it before I did. And and it's just so wonderful to see, because again, while you are certainly your own person and you've made a name for yourself based on what you've done, your wonderful book, which I enjoyed immensely, and the teachings that you do, just like Tom Ziegler, while he has his own way, is carrying on the legend of his dad, and Tracy Jones has her own thing, and she's also carrying on the legacy of her dad. You're carrying on the legacy of your dad, and I know that he's looking down upon you from heaven and saying, wow, Mia, wow, she is doing great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I have a good friend of mine, TJ, on the call, and so this is a quick side note, but Caroline Kostecki was my son's tutor in Korea, and her father is TJ, and he is also a motivational speaker. And the other day we're on the phone, and I love seeing their relationship because they have a similar relationship to the relationship I had with my dad and to the relationship you had with your dad. And I was talking to them, and I was saying, well, because Caroline has to carry she has a legacy to carry, I said. And he said, and TJ said, no, she doesn't have to carry a legacy. Like, she can do her own thing. Like, he was like taking her off the hook, right? Like, no pressure. You don't have to. And my response was, carrying your legacy is creating her own, right? We create our own legacy, and that is carrying our parents' legacy. You may not do what your parents does, but if you are following principles, following values, and you're leading a good life, you are carrying that legacy. Absolutely. So I think you've done that, and I'm proud to say that I've done that as well. And you mentioned my community, and then we're going to talk about your dad a little bit. But we mentioned my community, and my community. The name of the community is Sado's Core, and it's based on core principles. And just like you have 5 laws of success, I find that there are 4 principles, 4 skills that kind of go into the formula whenever we are trying to bridge the gap between where we are and where we're trying to go. And those 4 skills are clarity, which is the C, organization, which is the O, resilience, which is the R, and then E, emotional intelligence.
Oh,
and
I love that.
I learned emotional intelligence greatly through my dad. Sure. But one of the things that I love so much and that I brought you on here is because you, my friend, are the master of emotional intelligence. There's no one that I have ever met that is more generous in spirit and more aligned with a mindset as you are with the Go-Giver mindset. It's in everything you do. It's in how you practice. It's in how you communicate. It's in everything that you do. You are emotionally intelligent. So can you tell me why or how you learned about emotional intelligence and why emotional intelligence is so important?
Yeah. First, please know how amazingly honored and grateful that I am by those kind words. What you said, I can't think of anything nicer. Wow. I'm not often speechless, but you've almost got me there now. Really, I learned emotional intelligence from observing my dad. And, this was long before emotional intelligence was even coined as a phrase. I just watched my dad, how he interacted with others, and the genuine interest he took in everyone, how he wanted to make people feel genuinely good about themselves. I always say with people skills and, emotional intelligence is probably the most important aspect of people skills. And I think people skills is probably the most important aspect of success, only because, you can have all the talent and all the competence and all the mastery of a certain thing and that's great. It's wonderful. It's very important, but there's a lot of people that have that, there's a lot of talent in the world. Okay. And you can get it to a degree of legitimate success through talent and hard work alone. Absolutely. But, like Marshall Goldsmith said in his great book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. 99 times out of 100, it's really that person who has those people skills that allows them to get to that, that next level. And so, I always say the single greatest people skill is a highly developed and authentic interest in the other person. And again, I just watched my dad whenever we would, just as a young kid, with the way he talked to people. It didn't matter who that person was. It didn't matter what position they held. He asked about them. He wanted to know about them, about their family, about, and people loved him. Right. And I think with him, it was actually very natural. Okay. With most of us, it's not. With me, I don't think it was, but I think with him, it was. He had a gift for that.
And Bob, tell them real quick, because I know that I know what he did for his line of work because I've heard it, but I would love the audience to know what the school that your dad had and what he did for a living.
So he had a business called the Academy of Physical and Social Development, and it was sort of a gymnasium school, not a school that people stayed at or anything, or or went to for hours a day. It is usually twice a week, an hour and a half. And it was very psychodynamically oriented, but it was physical in nature, in that, dad kind of was the person who came up with the idea. And here's a guy who never went to college, here's a guy that was never even a thought where he grew up. But again, he did have a gift, and he kind of realized that if you could make a person feel comfortable with themselves physically, okay, through self-defense, through sports, you could get them to feel comfortable with themselves emotionally. And so really that's what he did. And it was funny, back in 1971, he and the Academy were written up in Time magazine, and again, here's someone who never, went to college. It was just, and people who were, getting their master's degree came to do internships at the Academy, so it was a neat thing. But you talk about emotional intelligence and why is it so important? And we look at emotional intelligence. What is it really? And there are many definitions of emotional intelligence. Most of them very, very good, I think. But really, what it comes down to is it's being able to identify, right? To be able to identify yours and the other person's feelings. Okay, to be able to regulate your feelings and be able to act upon those feelings in a way that benefits everyone involved. And I often say, when you can control your own emotions, when you can master your own emotions and help the other person to work effectively within theirs, now your level of influence is ready to go through the roof.
That's right. That's right. What you said about your dad really impacted me, because so my community is focused all on really 3 pillars, and it's all my work is focused on these 3 pillars, and it's mindset, wellness, and relationships. And what I love is that your father had this deep understanding that wellness, mindset, and relationships were intertwined, right? Yeah. So you have to, that expression of physical helping your emotional, just that understanding. You don't need to go to school for that. You don't need to have a college degree. Right. It's just innate. It makes us feel better. It makes us be better people. It makes us relate better. It makes us be more confident. And the fact that he helped children do that, it also shows how he formed you, right? Because maybe that has to have had a huge impact in your well-being.
Oh yeah, well I grew up around the Academy, so I got to see, and so along with the kids, basically the parents would come in for the lessons as well, and often participate in it. So you might have let's say a dad and a son, or a mother and a son, and then it started in, like, I think 1955. So at that time it was the son, the sexist world that it was the sons that were kind of the but then eventually the daughters too, and it became, but let's just
don't worry, I've taken care of that. Now I have it all for women. Now I have a community all for women.
Exactly.
So you've taken care of that.
Yeah. But let's say you had let's say in this case you had a father and a son, and the father was someone who maybe wasn't very physical. He was more of an intellectual and was not good at sports and really couldn't teach his kids sports. And the kid was bullied at school or just felt as though he was right. And when you'd have the son and you'd have the father in the same lesson, being able to in a very confidence building way, both of them begin to learn how to box with each other and do it with control, right? And you'd have them being able to play ball with each other, and you'd be able to, this really helped the family to have confidence in themselves. And from that point, now they could really learn to become socially more adept. So while it was focused on the kids, it was really a family affair.
Right. And I think we can tie that back at the very beginning, how we were talking about the difference between being a go-giver and not being a doormat, which is you have to know how to defend yourself, right? Even you have to know how to defend yourself and how to protect yourself and still be generous and kind. And I mean, would you agree that?
Well, you brought up earlier about, being able to say no to people. Okay. Well, as a go-giver, you're generally going to be very, very successful. And the more successful you become, the more people are going to want your time. And you cannot give everyone your time because you have certain, you have either a marketplace or a family or whatever you have that you have to give. You can't say yes to everyone, in other words. Okay.
Right.
It's just not, it can't happen without you losing yourself and without your, right. And so you've got to be able to say no much more than you say yes. The key is saying no in a way that honors that other person, that respects that other person, that helps that person see that you see them as a person of value and that it's not something. I can give an example if you'd like.
Sure.
Let's say you're asked to serve on a committee. Okay. It could be at school, it could be for a group, could be whatever it happens to be. Okay. And it's just not something you want to do. And for whatever reason it is. Now, we've all been taught, through society, different ways of saying no. And there's one that came up about 20 years ago that people started saying, well, no is a complete sentence, right? And, and people would feel all empowered when they'd hear that. But I'd say, really, is that really a legitimate thing? Someone asks you to serve on a committee. Are you going to say no? Well, that might literally be a complete sentence. No, period. But is that really something that you feel comfortable doing? It's a turnoff. It's an insult to the other person, and it's incongruent with your value system of treating people with respect and kindness. So I don't think that's a great way to do it. Then there's, it says, well, just tell a little kind of fib. I don't have time, and you might really believe, I don't have time or whatever. First of all, the challenge with that is it's not that you don't have time, it's that you don't value doing that thing as much as you value not doing that thing, right? And doing other things. But the big thing is that person's going to, they hear that all the time. So they're going to probably be able to persuasively share with you how time isn't an issue. Or they're going to say, okay, well, that's okay. We're doing it again in 3 months. I'll come back to you then. Now you're in a position where you've got to fib again, or you've got to admit that that's not true. You just don't want to do it. You don't feel good about yourself and they don't fit right. So let's say no in a different way. Let's say no the go-giver way and see how that would work out. So again, this person asked you to serve on the committee. And again, it's just not something you want to do. And so the basic response would be, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to even be asked, right? Or you could use the words a little bit different. It could be, oh, thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, or while it's not something I choose to take on, I'm so grateful that you would think of me, anything like that. What you didn't do is you didn't make an excuse, give them an excuse to hang on to be able to answer. What you did, though, is you were kind. You honored them by telling you how honored they were, but you obviously said it in such a way that they got that it's just not something you choose to do. Now, if they come back and say, well, oh, but we really need you and blah, 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 well, so you listen respectfully, you don't interrupt. You have a look of just serenity on your face and in your presence. And once they're through, you pause a quick second and then you say, oh, I'd rather not. But again, thank you so much for asking. Boom. You do that and it will set you free. That's how you say no, but you do it as a go-giver. By the way, there are times where you do need to tell them the reason why, depending upon the relationship and so forth. Because I'm not saying never do that, but by and large, to the degree that you can let yourself not give an excuse, that's going to be much more helpful.
So Bob, I have a follow-up question to that, but it's 10:30 and I know that our interview is 30 minutes. Is it okay if we go over for a few minutes,
Sure.
5 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Because
for
I
you,
do have
anything.
Thank you. So I do have a follow-up question to that. And it's, how do you, if your focus as being a go-giver is to serve others and to be of value to others, how do you discern when it is appropriate to say no and when you should say yes because you are a person who's offering value and who's taking the other person's interest into your own best interest?
So I think it all goes back to values again. Okay. And, we have there's not just one value. We have a stack of values, things that we value and things we value a lot, but maybe not as much as that top value. And then there's certain situations where certain values are right. And so you put every question that you are asked or every request you receive, you put that kind of against your value system, right? And you say, which is more appropriate for me to do? Is it appropriate for me to take this on? Will this in any way be contrary to my value system, in which I really need to be doing this, or I need to be serving this many people, and doing that will take time away from doing that? You know what I'm saying? So we just kind of put that again. Dan Kennedy, who was a great speaker and information marketer, once said, and I used to keep this pinned to my computer with a little yellow sticky until I didn't need it anymore, until it was totally in my head and I got it in my heart. And he used to say, is what I'm about to do right now the highest and best use of my time? And I'd say, I'd add, is it the highest and best use of my time and the most congruent with my values?
Wow.
So I think when we ask ourselves that question, now don't get me wrong, it's still difficult to say no to people. I'm asked constantly, being an author, I'm constantly asked to read manuscripts for books and write forwards and do. I just had to eventually come to the decision that I could either, spend 20, 25 hours a week reading great manuscripts or get work done that I needed to do. So I just let people know that is, and I do tell them in this case that is the issue. But I do it, again, in a way that's very, empowering to them, respectful to them, honoring of them. But, it's not something that I can do without it really hurting my own productivity and being incongruent with my value system of doing the work I need to do for my customers and clients.
Right. And I would venture to say it's especially hard for a person like you to say no, because you have this reputation of being this generous and kind and go-giving person. And now you're saying no and establishing those boundaries. And then people can choose to look at it and say, oh, I thought Bob was a go-giver, but he said no, which of course is their issue, their perception, not yours. But I could see where a person that is trying to establish a reputation of being a go-giver could confuse that for having to say yes more often than they would like.
Right. That's why it's very important to be able to frame your responses in the correct way. And I've had people who've written me back, because most of the requests like that I get it through email, or they've written me back, that is the nicest no someone has ever told me. Bob, I that makes total sense to me. That now every so often there's someone who really gets mad about it. Again, I can't do it, but I'm telling you, 99% of the time I get letters back, emails back, thanking me for the way I said no and that they totally understand. And this is also,
and that just goes to speak of your emotional intelligence as well.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean, it's not to toot your horn. It's the truth, right? Obviously, that's a skill that you are proficient at, and it shows even in those circumstances.
Yeah, well, and I believe that's an important, again, it's an important aspect of doing what we do. And it's also why when we talk to people about the go-giver philosophy or go-giver way, we make sure they understand that being a go-giver does not mean being self-sacrificial. If you're saying yes to things that are then causing you ulcers, that's not a good thing.
Right. So we have some people on the chat, and they're just loving what you said. And Caroline shared that she really struggles with saying no. So this is extremely helpful.
Just practice this, Caroline. Practice it with someone, practice it by yourself, practice it in the mirror, what have you, because you want to know what you're going to say before you say it. You know what I'm saying? And it will, might take you a couple times to get comfortable, but I'm telling you, once you really learn this and have this down, you will just be amazed at how much easier it is to be able to say no. And again, protect your own personage, which is very important.
Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation. And I don't think 30 minutes is enough time with you. So I'm going to have to invite you back
Anytime,
to
my
talk
friend.
more about all these other questions that I have for you. I did want to show this. So, as you know, I'm part of Bob's community, and I received this in the mail. So you can hold up yours, and I'm going to hold up mine. I have a Go Giver mug that I use for our cheer when we get together, which actually is happening in 20 minutes. We're gonna be together as well on Bob's call.
And I'm gonna brag to everybody. I'm gonna brag to everybody in our Zoom that I got to be interviewed by you.
That's awesome. So for those of you that want to connect with Bob, make sure that you go to his website, thegogiver.com. You can join his community. He is a wonderful human, and you have access to him for it. You know, the price is immeasurable compared to the value that you offer, as you have taught us, and know how important it is to have an emotional intelligence skill developed in every aspect of your life, and in your mindset, your wellness, and your relationships. So for those of you that are not a part of Thaddeus Core community, if you love this content and you want more of this, I invite you also, for the women, to join us, and just send me an email, and we'll get you all set up with Thaddeus Core community. And lastly, for those of you that want to learn more about RejuvaFast, which is the other aspect of our business, you can find out about that on our website, carolinedeposada.com. So thank you so much. Thank you, Bob. You are absolutely amazing. I value you and I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you in 20 minutes.
Igual, mi amiga. Igual.
Everybody is saying thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes.
Great to be with all of you. Thank you so much.
You're getting great reviews, Bob, which is, of course, we would expect nothing short of that.
And seeing if I could multitask, I'd be able to read those myself.
This was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dave wants to know, was that a mugshot? Very funny, Dave. Terrific words of wisdom, Bob.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
All right, everybody. Take care.
See you soon.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bob. See you soon.